Bonjour, welcome to Lagniappe with Mon Voyage. I'm Nicole LeBlanc. Thank you so much for joining me today. As you probably know, I specialize in trips for arts, culture, and history enthusiasts to Europe and elsewhere, but especially Europe. And I want to talk today about one of my favorite cities in Europe that I think gets short shrift, gets a little bit overlooked because of its beautiful neighbor to the west. Lots of cruises stop at St. Petersburg, so a lot of folks have been to visit St. Petersburg. It's absolutely beautiful. The Hermitage is not to be missed. But I want to recommend the capital, a little bit to the southeast of St. Petersburg, and underappreciated, in my opinion, the incredible cosmopolitan city of Moscow, Moskva. The offerings in this city are just endless. It's people think of Moscow as a gray, drab Soviet place that would have no interest for a visitor. However, I find the opposite to be true. At least in the main parts of the area that you would visit as a tourist or traveler, the historic architecture is absolutely terrific. The art treasures at the museums and historical treasures at the museums are just undeniably fantastic, and they do not really travel outside of Russia. You have music opportunities, of course. All the performing arts are very strong in Moscow. Lots of other things to do as well. So I'm going to first start with where I like to stay. My favorite hotel is right across the street. It's a historic hotel right across the street from the Kremlin. The breakfast room, the large, beautiful breakfast room with chandeliers, overlooks the Kremlin. So every morning you sit down with this beautiful view and quite a nice breakfast spread, I should add, of the Kremlin and Red Square and the State History Museum. It's like the picture postcard that you see of Moscow. So this is your view every morning. Then, when you walk out to explore the neighborhood, of course, you have the entire Kremlin complex across the street. First, you have Red Square right there with Lenin's tomb, St. Basil's Cathedral with its famous colorful onion domes. You have the State History Museum. You have the rest of the Kremlin complex with several churches, the government buildings, and also a couple of museums. My favorite is the Armory. It's full of the most beautiful and interesting historical artifacts going back to, through all the many hundreds of years history of Russia, with things that belong to the czars, clothing that they wore, gifts that they were given by dignitaries from other countries. It's just fascinating. You also have, at Christmas time, a really fabulous, gigantic Christmas tree like Rockefeller Center next to the church and the Kremlin complex. I highly recommend going in the winter. You also have some really choice art museums in Moscow. The highlight would be the Tretyakov galleries. There are two Tretyakov galleries, and they're not next to each other. They're slightly different parts of town. One of them has older art going up through turn of the century-ish, and then the newer one is going to have modern 20th century and more modern art. Both collections are absolutely outstanding. I've seen some of the most beautiful paintings I have ever seen, including some monumental canvases depicting historical events in Russia at the quote-unquote old Tretyakov Gallery. At the new Tretyakov Gallery, the most interesting part of the collection to me is the Soviet realist paintings that depict this perfect agrarian idyllic life that the Soviet Union liked to portray as what life was in Russia at that time. Of course, that's not necessarily the case, but that's what these paintings depict. And there are paintings that depict the leaders, the peasants, you name it, but it's this idyllic Soviet life. And it's very interesting to look at those with the perspective of history, looking back on what those images tried to portray and what we may know to be different now. Another place to see some fantastic Soviet art, and again, this art definitely doesn't travel, but you'll be traveling when you see it, are the subway stations in Moscow. Stalin built the subway system in Moscow to be the envy of the world. And many stations are museum-worthy art. There are stations with statues, there are stations with paintings, with mosaics. Again, either some of the stations, like statues, might honor national heroes or war heroes from World War II. The mosaics might depict, the athleticism and strength of the Soviet worker. But you can do a whole day just riding around on the subway. Especially, I recommend having a guide for really anything in Moscow to really appreciate it. But you can go with your guide for a day underground. It's a great thing to do on a rainy day, and see all these subway stations. You can also take the subway out to some interesting, very interesting other attractions. There's a terrific market up north that you can go to if you want to get some souvenirs or handcrafts, etc. Or an ermine skull to take back to your sister who collects weird things. Just saying. And the other thing you can take the subway to, which is really quite something, is this Russian Cosmonautics Museum. As you know, Russia was in a vigorous space race against the United States in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and probably still today, but we cooperate a little more now. It's literally under the ground, but the top of it, you go down to go in, but on the top is this soaring, I'm not sure if it's made of steel or what, but this soaring like streak up to the heavens. It is Soviet triumphalism at its most Soviet triumphalistic. Soviet triumphant. In any event, the collection at the Cosmonautics Museum is really cool, with so many artifacts from Sputnik, pre-Sputnik, to the space station, and you have so many really amazing artifacts from the space exploration and space history of this Russia and the Soviet Union, including Sputnik, or a model of Sputnik. And my favorite part is the dogs that went into space. You had several dogs. Laika is the most famous one, but you also had two other dogs named Belka and Strelka. And Belka and Strelka are taxidermied in the museum in their little space capsule for everyone to see. And they sell zipper pencil bags with Belka and Strelka's picture on them. Anyway, Moscow, performing arts, so much. The Bolshoi, of course, is the most famous. You have the historic theater, plus several other parts of the Bolshoi, smaller theaters that are a little bit less expensive to go to a show. You have the Moscow Tchaikovsky Conservatory. You have multiple opera companies, theater companies, dance companies, classical concerts, symphonic concerts, recitals, you name it. Moscow is a thriving center for the performing arts of extremely high quality. So there's so much to do and see in Moscow. I think it's really a place you should think about going if you've never been before. I can't wait to go back. And if you'd like to learn more about planning a trip to Moscow, or if I can help you plan a trip to Moscow, please contact me at my website, monvoyagetravel.com. Until the next time, à la prochaine.